Okay, let's just completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about the everyday lives of Ottoman women. When most people hear the words Ottoman Empire and women together, their minds immediately jump straight to the imperial harem, right? You picture a world of secluded palaces, endless luxury, and absolute submission. But in this explainer, we're diving into the actual historical records to uncover the real, fascinating truth about how ordinary, commoner women actually got married, lived their lives, and fiercely asserted their rights.
So, picture this. You're a working-class mother in the 17th century Ottoman Empire. Your daily reality is absolutely nothing like that Western fantasy of endless harems and secluded women. Instead of unlimited wives, you almost certainly lived in a monogamous household. Why? Well, for one, polygamy was incredibly expensive, and honestly, it was generally frowned upon for the average family. But more importantly, your life was governed by strict legal contracts and robust female property rights that would actually seem remarkably modern to us today.
You know, what's really interesting is that early European travelers were absolutely shocked by what they saw when they visited. Listen to this quote from Solomon Schweiger. He was a 16th century Catholic priest traveling through Turkey. He literally wrote, "The Turks govern the world, and their wives govern them. In no other country, women do enjoy themselves as much." He was just floored to find that these women were not locked away in silent obedience at all. They were running households, managing neighborhood affairs, fiercely negotiating at the local markets and the hammams, and wielding some serious influence over their husbands and communities.
Section 1, Matchmakers and the Viewers. Let's look at how this highly organized, female-led journey began.
Now, courtship certainly wasn't just random chance. We're talking about a highly structured, four-step playbook orchestrated entirely by mothers and female professionals long before a single legal document was ever signed. First up, you have the scouting phase. Then, the prospective mother-in-law and her female relatives visit the girl's home. They were known as the juragis, or viewers. Just imagine the absolute tension in the room during this visit. It was basically a strict formal inspection disguised as a polite social call. If everyone agrees it's a match, the groom's family sends the agerlik. And this wasn't just some trivial gift, it was a substantial chunk of money, acting as a sign of serious commitment to help cover wedding expenses. Only after all these complex social negotiations were ironed out did the actual legal marriage, the nekya, take place.
Let's look a little closer at the woman who kicked off this whole shebang, the Kulavuz. She was the ultimate social intelligence gatherer. Basically, think of her as a 17th century human dating app. If a mother couldn't find a suitable bride for her son among her immediate circle, she hired the Kulavuz. This professional matchmaker made it her exclusive business to know absolutely everything about the marriageable girls in the area. If she showed up at your door with the viewers, your whole household went into an absolute flutter of nervous excitement. It was this highly ceremonious occasion where the two mothers would politely exchange compliments while the young woman was formally presented.
Section 2. The Marriage Contract. Once the match was successfully made, the proceedings moved directly into the public legal sphere.
And right here is where the Ottoman woman really flexed her power. Unlike in Christian Europe at the time, an Ottoman Islamic marriage was not a religious sacrament, it was an aqid, which is a strictly binding civil contract. She, or her family acting on her behalf, acted as a highly savvy legal party ensuring her physical and financial security. This contract required explicit words of consent, credible witnesses, and, crucially, an adequate dower paid directly to the bride. To be completely clear, this wasn't the purchase of a bride. It was a meticulously crafted legal framework designed to establish a new household while legally protecting the women's rights from day one.
So let's zoom in on that dower, known as the mehr, because understanding this is absolutely crucial to grasping an Ottoman woman's power. In many parts of the empire, like Anatolia and the Balkans, this dower was often what they called deferred, or mer-e-muajel. This meant the groom didn't actually pay it up front. Instead, he pledged a significant sum of money that he'd only have to pay if he divorced her without a valid reason or if he died. This deferred mehr was essentially an ironclad, built-in insurance policy. It placed a massive, sometimes totally insurmountable financial barrier against the husband's ability to just easily repudiate his wife on a whim.
Because of this brilliant legal setup, women held profound economic autonomy. When an Ottoman woman got married, there was no fusion of wealth into a single pot controlled by the husband. Her property remained completely, 100% her own. If she brought money, real estate, or a business into the marriage, she retained the full legal right to manage it, buy, sell, or lend it without ever needing to ask for his permission. This guaranteed her undeniable economic independence, which allowed so many women to act as key players in the urban economy and even establish massive public endowments and charities.
Section 3. Rules of Interfaith Love. The Ottoman Empire was a vast, highly diverse realm. So let's explore how these exact same contracts worked across different religions. When we dig into the archival research, specifically looking at the meticulous records kept by local judges called qadis, we find that interfaith marriages were an everyday reality. These weren't rare, scandalous exceptions confined to the shadows at all. They were a heavily regulated, completely normal part of urban life in bustling cities, where Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived side by side.
Now, Islamic law did set very clear boundaries for these unions. As outlined here, it permitted Muslim men to marry non-Muslim women, specifically Christians and Jews. However, it explicitly prohibited the reverse scenario, meaning a Muslim woman could not legally marry a non-Muslim man. According to the historical sources, this rule was fundamentally designed to maintain a specific social and religious hierarchy within the empire. Since the husband was legally considered the head of the household, allowing him to be a non-Muslim would have disrupted the overarching societal structure the Ottomans wanted to uphold.
But what about the wife's actual daily life inside these mixed marriages? Well, she actually retained total religious autonomy within the household. A Christian or Jewish wife could completely maintain her religious identity. She was never legally forced to convert to Islam. In fact, we have incredible court records showing Christian wives of Muslim men fighting for and actually winning the right to have a traditional Christian burial. They successfully defended their rights in Islamic courts, despite facing massive pressure and even threats of excommunication from their own Orthodox Church.
All right, we need to debunk a massive historical misunderstanding regarding these mixed marriages right now. European travelers often wrote these scandalized accounts about a practice they called kabine. They described it as this strange temporary marriage contract where a foreign man essentially just rented a local wife. But historians looking at the actual court records have found that kabine was literally just a local Greek dialect word for standard, legally binding Islamic marriage, a nikah, that included that deferred dower we talked about earlier. Foreign merchants weren't inventing a new type of temporary marriage at all. They were just misunderstanding local law, utilizing the standard Ottoman legal system to marry local women, and then later using the standard divorce procedures when it was time for them to pack up and head back to Europe.
Section 4. Divorce and Financial Freedom. Which brings us perfectly to our final chapter. What actually happened if the marriage failed? And how did the commoner woman navigate the dissolution of her household?
Under the law, husbands had the theoretical right of easy repudiation, which was called talaq. He could initiate a divorce quite simply on paper. However, in practice, this was heavily restricted by the crushing financial burden of having to instantly pay out that deferred dower. He couldn't just walk away for free. It would cost him dearly. On the flip side, wives frequently utilized the type of divorce called hul. This was a divorce by mutual agreement, but it was initiated by the wife. She would actually go to the Sharia court herself to officially request this, actively trading her deferred dower, essentially paying off her husband to buy her freedom from an unhappy marriage.
So summarizing her rights, it becomes incredibly clear that an ordinary Ottoman woman was a formidable legal and economic force in her own community. If a divorce did occur, she walked away with her own personal property entirely intact. She had real, actionable mechanisms to exit a marriage through the court. She wasn't just some passive subject waiting for her fate to be decided by men. She was a highly active manager of both her household and, very often, major commercial affairs in the bustling city markets. All of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. Knowing everything we've just covered today, the elaborate matchmakers, the heavily negotiated legal civil contracts, the financial firewalls, and the fiercely independent property rights, was the everyday Ottoman woman really the helpless subject of Western myth? Or was she in fact a savvy contractor expertly navigating the complex realities of her own life? It completely reshapes our understanding of history, doesn't it? The Ottoman commoner woman wasn't a mythic, secluded figure. She was a legally protected, financially independent force to be reckoned with. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.